Welcome back, Kaiju heads. In today's monster-packed video, we will introduce you to the scariest Godzilla incarnations ranging from Space Godzilla and Burning Godzilla of the 90s to Godzilla Earth and Godzilla -1 of the 21st century. Let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Shin Godzilla, the King of Mutation, 2016. 2016's Shin Godzilla ranks the highest on the freakiness meter, and there's no doubt about that. Toho loved to assign new origin stories to different Gojira incarnations, and Shin Godzilla was one such example. This was a prehistoric marine creature whose underwater lair was suddenly filled with nuclear material when humans dumped barrels of nuclear waste into the ocean in the 1950s. To adapt to its radioactive surroundings, this creature began feeding on the nuclear material and evolved into a grotesque form for 60 long years, before finally emerging on the shores of Japan as Shin Godzilla. Upon its first landfall, Shin Godzilla was a gigantic wriggly monster with scary eyes, bloody stretch of muscles within its mouth, and gills that constantly gurgled out blood. When it finally evolved into the Shin Godzilla, it weighed 92,000 metric tons, with a height of 118.5 meters and a length of 333 meters, the highest for a Godzilla incarnation till that time. This frightening incarnation displayed pure evil in its icy dead eyes, while a monstrous set of teeth jutted out from the muscles outside its mouth. Shin Godzilla's atomic blast switched between a fiery breath and a concentrated purple beam, capable of cutting through high-rises like butter and setting entire cities ablaze. Shin Godzilla's breath attacks would be accompanied by a spine-chilling shriek, unlike any other incarnation. Shin Godzilla's large, jagged dorsal plates could also shoot atomic blasts, and so could its pointy tail, which either curled up like a scorpion or rotated like a crane, while releasing the deadly purple beam. To add to its scary quotient, the Shin Godzilla had an anti-flash membrane instead of eyelids, and gills that leaked purple atomic radiation. Its skin looked like a cracked surface with red scales visible from inside, much like keloid scars. When this genetic wonder was frozen solid in the middle of Tokyo, countless humanoid skeleton-like creatures, with Godzilla's dorsal plates on their backs, emerged from Shin Godzilla's tail. The scene in which Shin Godzilla rampages through Tokyo with persecution of the masses playing in the backdrop is the stuff of nightmares that monster lovers live for. Godzilla -1 survived a bomb explosion in its mouth. 2023. Godzilla -1 from the 2023 movie of the same name is another frightening abomination, whose snarls and screeches are enough to make everyone shudder. Interestingly, Godzilla -1's thunderous roars were an amplified version of the first ever Gojira from 1954. This creature was all the more scary, owing to its part dinosaur, part reptilian origins. According to Godzilla's new origin story, this creature featured in the legends and myths of Odo Island, and that's where it first appeared when World War II was ending in 1945. Attacking a Japanese airbase on the island, this evil incarnation displayed vicious aggressiveness, stomping, biting, and slamming anything and everything that moved. This already evil Godzilla was angered to a disastrous level by the hydrogen bomb testing at Bikini Atoll the following year. The exposure to radiation caused Godzilla to severely mutate for a year and converted the creature into a monstrous form and short-tempered persona. Godzilla -1's scary element was accentuated by likening its atomic breath process to the implosion method of detonating an atomic bomb. Each of Godzilla's sharp, pointy dorsal plates would first jut out one by one in preparation for the fiery blast, and then all of them pierced his skin together, making his atomic breath kind of like the shriek of agony. This concentrated blue beam was so powerful that it inflicted injuries to Godzilla's mouth and throat. Godzilla is forced to regenerate his burnt tissues till he can fire another round. This -1 version is so deadly that it survived a mine detonation inside its mouth that blasted a massive hole in its head, despite being one of the smallest Godzilla incarnations at 50 meters. The -1 edition was so formidable that its atomic breath generated shockwaves that crumbled everything within a radius of 6 kilometers. Even though this radioactive threat was killed in the end, it left behind harmful radioactive contamination in pieces of its flesh, which continued to regenerate dangerously. Burning Godzilla, the overheated kaiju that could burn down the planet, 1995. Next, we have the Burning Godzilla from 1995's Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. This Godzilla, at the beginning of the Heisei-era films, was explained to be a theropod dinosaur called the Godzillasaurus that was heavily mutated by nuclear radiation and turned into the monster that Godzilla is. At the end of the Heisei era, Godzilla was living a peaceful life on Boss Island, but it was cut short when Godzilla absorbed the energy released by severe levels of uranium deposits, triggered by a volcanic eruption. This caused Godzilla to overheat to dangerous levels, and his heart, which acts as a nuclear reactor, to go into shock. Godzilla developed lava-like rashes and began glowing all orange, with its dorsal plates turning a blazing red, thus becoming the Burning Godzilla, a walking nuclear bomb. Burning Godzilla got menacing cracks on its skin, with smoke constantly oozing out of the cracks. When in the ocean, this overheated Godzilla caused the water around him to boil. Godzilla's sizzling skin kept him in constant agony, and the pain contributed to his murderous behavior. The scariest thing about Burning Godzilla, other than its scary orange eyes, was that he could go off any moment and cause a worldwide, cataclysmic destruction. With Burning Godzilla around, humanity lived in constant fear of getting wiped out as a species. It was theorized that Godzilla would explode when its internal temperature reached 1200 degrees Celsius. This overheated Godzilla had the potential to burn down the entire planet with its radioactive meltdown, meaning if the Burning Godzilla exploded, it would set Earth's atmosphere on fire and burn down its surface. With Godzilla's internal radioactivity spiking to uncontrollable levels, this kaiju indeed began to melt away, with its dorsal plates dissipating first, and then its skin and bones. The meltdown caused all of Tokyo to be contaminated by radiation. However, the excess radiation resurrected his fallen son, who emerged as the new Godzilla. GMK Godzilla was a supernatural entity and fought 3 guardian monsters, 2001. Next up, we have a possessed Godzilla taken over by vengeful spirits, the GMK Godzilla, that was introduced in 2001's Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. This Godzilla was revived by the restless souls of those who were killed by the Japanese military in the Pacific Theater during World War II. Guided by the evil spirits, GMK Godzilla was pure hell unleashed on Earth, who wanted to destroy Japan and its people as punishment for forgetting the atrocities of the past. The scariest thing about the GMK Godzilla was unpredictability. It emerged every few years to wreak havoc on the shores of Japan, but in absolute stealth mode, kind of like a ghost. When the GMK Godzilla finally made landfall, it was indeed discovered as a supernatural entity with misty, pupil-less eyes, gray, ghostly skin, and a fanged maw. To add to its otherworldly element, the GMK Godzilla's white dorsal plate sizzled like electricity while charging up for firing the atomic breath. GMK Godzilla was so menacing that military missiles designed to penetrate rock failed to pierce this creature's armored skin. Not one, but all 3 guardian monsters of Earth, Baragon, Mothra, and Ghidorah, had to awaken to tackle this evil force of nature, but to no effect, as GMK Godzilla's atomic blast, an intense blue beam, could generate a mushroom cloud of explosion and incinerate other kaiju instantly upon attack. Its fiery breath was equally powerful underwater, owing to its paranormal origins. The GMK Godzilla absorbed Ghidorah's gravity beams and upgraded his own atomic breath to generate an even stronger blue beam shrouded in sparkling electricity, which killed Ghidorah in one single shot. This supernatural entity could only be defeated when the spirits of the guardian monsters dragged it down to the ocean bed. Its leaking atomic breath led to a massive explosion, destroying the ghost Gojira, but leaving behind its giant, scary, throbbing heart. Monsterverse Godzilla, the ever-evolving incarnation, 2014 to present. Now comes the Monsterverse Godzilla, who was introduced in 2014 as a destructive titan, but has taken the role of a protective kaiju in Legendary's kaiju universe, a terrifying embodiment of nuclear power. The Monsterverse Godzilla is the second biggest incarnation after Godzilla Earth. Monsterverse introduced Godzilla as a creature that dates back to the Permian period, millions of years ago, who survived several extinction events by relocating to the bottom of the sea and hibernating, awakened by a nuclear submarine in 1954, and surviving a hydrogen bomb attack. Godzilla remained under the surface till the arrival of the parasitic Mutos forced him to make landfall. In his burning form, this Godzilla's body temperature was raised to 1500 degrees Celsius, while its atomic breath is estimated to have a minimum temperature of 20,000 degrees Celsius. This Godzilla is not just frightening to mere humans, but also scares the heck out of every other kaiju, as was evident when the likes of Scylla, Behemoth, Methuselah, Rodan, and the Queen Muto bowed to him, accepting the huffing and puffing Godzilla as their king. In the prehistoric era, this Godzilla was the alpha titan of his ecosystem, preventing the overpopulation of other kaiju while maintaining nature's balance. This alpha titan, who draws powers from Hollow Earth, has one-up Kong in an explosive battle and is all set to take on the legendary ice titan Shimo next. Monsterverse Godzilla is potentially a much bigger threat to humanity than any other live-action incarnation, but thanks to its peacekeeping stance, we still exist in a world full of titans. Monsterverse Godzilla's dorsal plates serve as atomic power storage, with its atomic blast taking the form of a blue beam, capable of drilling a hole from the surface all the way into Hollow Earth. If that was not frightening enough, the Titanous Godzilla can also release concentrated atomic shockwaves called the nuclear pulse, and become a burning monster through its symbiosis with Mothra. The Monsterverse Godzilla got a neon pink atomic breath upgrade for the upcoming film Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, and we can't wait to witness what else this king of monsters will have in store for us. Godzilla Earth, the biggest Godzilla that drove humans away from Earth, 2017. This brings us to the Godzilla that's bigger and badder than every other incarnation, towering at a height of 318 meters and weighing a whopping 100,000 metric tons. We are talking about Godzilla Earth from the Godzilla anime trilogy, who's not only wiped out other Titan species from Earth, but also forced humans to relocate to other planets. How scary is that? Godzilla Earth is frightening on so many levels. First, its plant-based origins enabled this creature to incorporate traits of several other living organisms through the process of horizontal gene transfer over the course of 20,000 years, making it an invincible monstrosity. Secondly, owing to its territorial nature, this Godzilla spread its genes around, spawned new kaiju from its cells, and transformed Earth's natural environment to his liking. Godzilla Earth became the most evolved being on the planet, and hence developed some frightening but pretty cool abilities. Godzilla Earth's atomic breath was a concentrated beam of blue electromagnetic energy with absolute accuracy. It could extend deep into space and could reach a maximum temperature of 3,000 gigawatts. He possessed an even more lethal upgrade of the atomic breath, which was powerful enough to eradicate an Earth-bound asteroid that had a mass equivalent to that of the moon. It's no surprise that a Godzilla of this stature would have an over-the-top atomic breath, but in addition to that, this king of the monsters could cast an impenetrable shield around it, generate shock waves with its roar and tail swings, and move around undetected by absorbing radio waves. To top it all, this Godzilla had muscles made of metallic fibers, thus making him practically undefeatable. However, Godzilla Earth's physiology had one interesting weakness. If the organ located in its dorsal plates, which generates the protective shield, is somehow destroyed, then Godzilla remains vulnerable to attacks till the organ is regenerated. Unlike his smaller incarnation, Godzilla Earth developed the power to convert excess amounts of electromagnetic energy into heat, transforming himself into a burning form. Godzilla Earth was impossible to kill and left with no choice. Humans accepted their fate of coexisting with this monster as their protector. Space Godzilla, the kaiju with psychic abilities, 1994. Another spooky version of Godzilla was the Space Godzilla, introduced in 1994's Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Fiery red eyes, 2 giant shoulder crystals, the power of fight, and its psychic abilities made this monster quite a formidable extraterrestrial foe. Space Godzilla was formed when some of Godzilla's cells were carried into space, either by Mothra or by Biollante spores, which then traveled through a black hole and merged with space minerals and energies to create this ominous being. Space Godzilla's agenda was as deadly as the monster itself, to kill his earthly counterpart and take his spot on Earth. This grotesque monster, with an unkempt array of teeth jutting out from outside his maw, terrorized baby Godzilla and even held him hostage in a crystal prison. A gamut of strange and unique powers added to the scary quotient of this telepathic beast. His abilities were something that neither Godzilla nor the audience had witnessed before. Space Godzilla could manipulate Earth elements and create gigantic crystals, further drawing his powers from them. In a dangerous move, Space Godzilla could manifest shards of crystal out of thin air to attack his opponents. His atomic breath took the form of a fiery whip, which he could shoot both from his mouth and his shoulder crystals. He could even cast a reactive shield that was completely immune to Godzilla's atomic breath. With his telekinetic ability, this alien monster propelled Godzilla in the air and lifted up a beaten down baby Godzilla. Space Godzilla's crystal dorsal plates emitted a throbbing glow, adding to the scary scary element of the unpredictable monster. Space Godzilla, detesting anything and everything that belongs to Earth, could generate an electromagnetic wave that incapacitated all electrical equipment. And scary as it may, but Space Godzilla could fly and launch all his fiery attacks while hovering over his opponents. Space Godzilla's flying form, encased in menacing armor of crystals, is the heaviest known kaiju incarnation, weighing 720,000 metric tons, 7 times the weight of the biggest Godzilla, Godzilla Earth. Gojira, an allegory of nuclear weapons, 1954. Our list would be incomplete without the OG Godzilla, who was terrifyingly scary because of his sheer authenticity. Introduced in 1954 by Toho, Gojira was created as an allegory for the dangers of nuclear weapons. The timing of Godzilla's introduction to the big screen was also significant. 1954's Godzilla movie released within a decade of the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which had a beyond devastating impact on Japan. Mirroring the aftermath, Godzilla was created as an ancient creature who remained dormant underwater for millions of years, until hydrogen bomb testing in the ocean stirred up its lair and forced it to awaken. The nuclear activity not only interrupted Godzilla's slumber, but also heavily mutated the creature into a monstrous kaiju, who harbored only hatred for humans for his grotesque transformation. This was the first time that Toho was introducing a prehistoric amphibian reptile from the Jurassic period to the viewers, and thus incorporated aspects of dinosaurs, amphibians, and reptiles, and a befitting origin story, to make the kaiju appear like a real creature, which further enhanced Godzilla's fear factor. The destruction carried out by Godzilla on the shores of Japan reflected the real-life aftermath of the nuclear bombings, thus making this new Toho kaiju a fearsome creature. This black and white portrayal of Godzilla and the disturbing imagery of overloaded hospitals, bloodied victims, and lost children explained what this monster was capable of, further adding to his frightening quotient. It was also the first time that the concept of atomic breath was introduced. As a result of its mutation from nuclear radiation, this creature called Godzilla could blast out a stream of intensely hot nuclear energy. This became Godzilla's most iconic and consistent power, which has gone through several variations over the course of Godzilla's cinematic history. Setting off entire city blocks on fire with its mist-like blaze was no biggie for Godzilla, and in 1954, that was a pretty scary feature. Despite its unique abilities and mutated powers, Godzilla proved vulnerable to the oxygen destroyer, a weapon that reduced this monster to mere bones. Kiryu, a biorobot and Godzilla's mechanical counterpart, 2002. This brings us to Kiryu, the human-made Godzilla, constructed with the bones of its 1954 predecessor. If you were wondering what could be scarier than an atomic fire-breathing mutated monstrosity, it would be Godzilla's biomechanical counterpart, whose atomic breath generated from a double maser cannon placed inside its mouth. Introduced in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla in 2002, the Kiryu, aka Mechagodzilla, was created by Japan's self-defense forces to combat the villainous Godzilla that kept terrifying Japan every now and then. The skeletal remains of the original Godzilla that was killed by the oxygen destroyer and sunk to the bottom of the sea were procured to build the Kiryu, thus making it a bioweapon. It was equipped with something called DNA computers in order to make the Kiryu operate like an organic being. With Kiryu around, one might think the Godzilla menace was taken care of, but the Kiryu assumed a frightening form after the spirit of the OG Godzilla awakened inside of him and overrode its programming. It is theorized that owing to the presence of the 1954 Godzilla's DNA in the Kiryu, this mecha monster was extremely vulnerable to Godzilla's roars and malfunctioned during its encounters with Godzilla. Gojira's roars resurrected the 1954 Godzilla's vengeful spirit inside the Kiryu and caused it to experience the painful memories of its death. Triggered by anger and vengeance, the Kiryu turned on its creators and set Tokyo ablaze. As a cyborg Godzilla, the Kiryu was a deadly killing machine equipped with railguns, missiles, cannons, and grenades in its arsenal. It could fire long-range interlocking rockets, multi-purpose guided missiles, and had a revolving drill in its hand, with which it delivered a gashing wound to Godzilla's chest. In another battle, Kiryu opened up Godzilla's old wound and blasted through his chest, causing Godzilla to roar in agony, triggering more flashbacks in the Kiryu. Instead of finishing off its opponent, the mecha monster carried the wounded Godzilla into the ocean and drowned with him, ensuring the 1954 Godzilla's bones were returned to the sea, while the new Godzilla lived on. The Kiryu's scary quotient lies in the fact that it scored a win against the real Godzilla. Any monster, human-made or naturally mutated, that can defeat Godzilla is bound to be menacing in itself. Godzilla Singular Point could control his own evolution, 2021. To round off the list, we have Godzilla Singular Point, a kaiju who originated in a dimensional singularity and freaked us out with his debut in the 2021 anime series of the same name. Godzilla Singular Point was established as a scary being even before its first appearance. This creature was heard of in dark myths and legends, whose arrival would mean an apocalypse, an absolute destruction of the world. It's the fear of the unknown that made Godzilla Singular Point a terrifying entity, even after his appearance. It's the unfamiliarity with a monster from another plane of existence that made this Godzilla all the more frightening. Upon its first arrival, this Godzilla underwent several transformations before finally towering at a height of 100 meters and looking like an absolute nightmare with multiple rows of teeth, fanged maws, armored skin, and a pointy tail. Godzilla Singular Point could manipulate his own mutation and exhibited grotesque abilities, like generating blood tentacles from its wounds and creating strange plants that could distort dimensions. The scariest feature of this Godzilla was that he could produce and control the red dust archetype, through which he could create monsters, alter the environment, and even bend the space-time continuum to its will. This sort of made him immortal in the sense that Godzilla will always be able to manifest itself through the red dust archetype, even after getting destroyed. Godzilla Singular Point had a unique process of dispatching its atomic breath by using a funnel of radiation rings. It is believed that Godzilla Singular Point's atomic breath is an amalgamation of several atomic beams from the future. At one point during his evolution, this Godzilla could blast out a flammable vapor with a temperature of -20 degrees Celsius. So that was one heck of a monster madness, and we hope you enjoyed it. Which one of these Godzilla incarnations scared you the most? Please share with us in the comments below. If you liked our video, please give us a shout out, and don't forget to watch this space for more marvelous content.